Welcome to the 2-Month Review, the weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter and 3%, in which we take one giant book, break it down bit by bit, section by section, read it, talk about it, discuss it, analyze it, have a good time. I am Chad Post from Open Letter Books, joined as always by Brian Wood, author of Joytime Killbox. Hi,
Chad. You know, I realized I didn't think about it a lot at first, but I'm beginning to really dislike the verbs you use to describe what we do on this podcast. Read it, talk about it, analyze it. It just sounds so unfun. And
yeah,
I don't know. It's like, this is clearly not a clinical, this is more like a, you know, a mystical yurt of exploration, more so than read about it, analyze it. I mean,
from now on, I should open it with like the 2-Month Review, in which we just shoot the shit for an hour about some given book that's long.
No, I mean, like, my whole thing with it is, you know, you bring on guests that are knowledgeable. They enlighten us with like fantastic things about literature or the culture or certain things, you know, just things that give us a better insight. And my whole thing was just to always kind of have fun and remember that, yeah, I mean, these are important works of literature, but at the same time, they're meant to entertain and delight. And so I just try to bring the delight and stupidity aspect of it for some bigger, longer, more complicated works that tend to only get, you know, very strict scholarship in the way they're talked about. So
yeah, I agree. We're just gonna have fun. I mean, we never analyze things. I don't know what I'm saying. We
do a little bit, but that's just kind of the footway to get like important, fun people to come in, and they never come back once they realize, oh, it was like that. I get it.
I'm good. Yeah. And speaking of, there are 3 episodes left in this season after today's. Yes, 3 after today. There's one finishing the last part of part 3, one covering parts 4 and 5, and one that's like scholarship or whatever about Ada. So if you're listening and would like to come on, please email me. We didn't have really any guests this season for any number of reasons. Things didn't work out, but also like with the election and with everything kind of going haywire, it's been a bit weird. But there's still some time if you want to get on. And also the JR season will start up almost immediately. So if you're interested in participating in talking about William Gaddis's JR, I am going to be emailing a ton of people with a request to be on the show later this week. But if you're interested in it, if that's a book that you want to read or have read, loved, whatever, and want to just talk, have fun, want to come on and have some fun, give us some insights, hit me up, slip into my DMs, and we will make that happen. Because that book's going to go on forever. It's very long.
I think this is a good setup for that, because again, you know, this is one that a lot of people hold dear or have a bad opinion of. Like either way, there's a hot take either way with this book. And again, being we can get into virgins later with this section, but being a virgin, jumping into this book as total virgin to it, it's interesting to see the way people react to it, or how did you not know that? It's like, I don't know, it's my first time reading it. Sorry, I haven't. It's not. I'm trying to read it fast, and it's hard because there's so much to it. So I think this is a good setup for. I think we can get the same response, at least for me and my opinions on JR reading it for the very first time, because that's a book a lot of people love and have read a lot, and there's a lot of scholarship on that work as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is really fun to read. And that one will be, in a way, like easier for like the initial point of the podcast of like recapping things and sort of like treating it as like a serial rather than as a book that you read as one big, huge, giant book, just treating it as like episode by episode. JR is incredibly episodic in its structure, and does lead to like recaps because there's so many different characters that you're like, hey, I need to remember where these people are. But anyways, this season we're finishing up is with Ardor by Vladimir Nabokov, and today we're covering part 3, chapters 1 through 6, and shit happens. Shit seriously happens all of a sudden.
Oh yeah,
which is great. What is your general thoughts on this before we get into it?
I don't know. I just feel like, I don't know. To me, it's that kind of like typical thing you get with books where I always explain it as, you know, the first, you know, 2/3, 3/5 of your book, you're getting all the horses out of the barn. And at some point you got to start corralling them back in a little bit. Otherwise you have extremely unsatisfied readers. And this is starting to kind of finish the stitches or the loops. And I'm starting to feel some completion with a lot of the the narrative threads that have been out there.
Yeah.
There's that feeling of like stuff is happening, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it does feel like things are, it's weird because there's some point in reading this where I was like, what is this book going to be?
Yeah.
I mean, we've read like 500 pages of it. And I'm like, what the fuck is this book really? You know what I mean? Like, so I see where, but I see what you're saying where it's like starting to corral things together, but at the same time, I'm still not certain like where we are. Like the anti-terror stuff, the stuff about time that gets referenced here, all that stuff is like, feels like it's about to come and it still has yet to come. And I don't know how that connects to like everything that's come before. I mean, we get our horror houses again, which is good fun. And we get big events, but like, yeah, you're right. It felt to me reading this, and most of it I read like last night and this morning, but there was a bit of like where it's really kind of goofy at times. Like the humor is kind of goofy here.
Yeah, like it's this bourgeoisie idea of like inheritance and, oh, I have a building here and a place there, and they're just kind of like, would you like it? I don't really want. I guess I'll take it. Oh, I have another place over here that I spend a month at a time, or you know what I mean? Like, there's something really bizarre the way they talk about estates and ownership and the way they treat people. It's like this caricature of wealth and inheritance and of what your name means. And
I love how in the book at the beginning, Van is sort of like, you know, I'm a good guy, really love Ada, like, you know, whatever. And then he's just like, if I don't get to fuck someone within 48 hours, shit's going wrong. Oh, buddy, slow down. You don't need to be that.
Yeah, it's like how they're like gifting each other houses left and right. Like, here, you want this house over here? I don't even use it. You can have it. I don't care.
Whatever. It's super fun. So do you want to go through like the chapters? I don't remember. I read them in 2 chunks. So I don't remember which ones are in which, but and
there's a wonderful reference to an American president in this one too, which seems perfectly timely. Just kind of a funny, I don't know, zeitgeist moment with the election taking place.
Wait, what is that? Let's start there. That sounds fun.
I don't know if I remember exactly where it is, but let me see if I can find it for you. But go ahead, you can start at the beginning. What do you think? Well, like
the beginning, I was going to say, so we get this really interesting thing in which I found out that about Van's books that he writes, illegible signatures, clairvoyantism, furnished space, and the texture of time, begun 1922. And I feel like the texture of time is the key to this book at some level.
Yeah, well, there is a lot more play with time in this one as well. We're talking about like this person would be this old if we went reverse in time, or the reverse of my hand. And there's this weird kind of, and two, I know, like, you know, there's no spoilers at this point, but with Lucette's death, this idea of how she dies in water and Terra and anti-Terra, like she's somehow, yeah. And it was funny because reading up to it, I thought like, oh man, he's really hitting home the whole Hamlet thing. Like she's Ophelia, right? I was like, I'm probably reading into it too much. And then like it specifically says that a few pages later, like, oh, okay, he really wants us to, he's really hammering it home. So there is this kind of specter, or there's probably going to be some sort of specter or ghost-like aspect perhaps, right? That we haven't quite gotten just yet, but it wouldn't surprise me if something like that happens.
This is where I know people that have read this are going to be like, don't do it. But like, you know, according to the rules of the game so far, Terra is where you go when you die. Correct. And communication from it comes through crazy people that explain things that he's studying and writing on. So like that loop of things seems to be set up here too.
Yeah. And especially with her being, what was the term they used? Quarter virgin?
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know what a quarter virgin means.
Yeah.
The bases change all the time. So as with these two different timelines, I don't know if there's a Terra first base, an anti-Terra first base.
Yeah.
I don't know what the bases are.
People are 130 years old.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how old was Abraham when he had his first kid? Like
400?
What's a few hundred years amongst friends? But no, like, and her dying as a virgin, there's that kind of trope in literature with that as well. So I'm curious how that plays out. So I'm really excited to see how that ends up. But
yeah, me too. So absolutely. And there is actually 2 deaths here. Lucette's the second one. The first one is Marina.
Correct. Yeah.
In which this is like where someone had mentioned in one of the early ones, if we had never, why we hadn't picked up on the fact that Marina is also Bond's mother.
Yeah.
And this is the one where it becomes like kind of on the nose, right?
Mm-hmm.
So on page 450, Bond's mother had been suffering from various obscure illnesses, which everybody thought she made up or talentedly simulated, and which she contended would be, or partly were, cured by willpower. Bond visited her less often than dutiful Lucette, whom he glimpsed her on 2 or 3 occasions, and then goes on to be like, and then Marina spoke to Bond about religion and Terra and the theater, but never about Ada, and just as he did not suspect that she knew everything about the horror and ardor of artists, that's a wonderful line to read, horror and ardor of artists. None suspected what pain in her bleeding bowels she was trying to lay by incantations and self-focusing, or on its opposite device, self-dissolving. So this is the one where it feels like that it's the first time that they say like, that's his mother. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it. But the other mother, Aqua, also has the weird illness, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But this was the first one I thought like this is indicating that she is, because it doesn't mention Aqua anywhere on this page.
Yeah, only Marina.
Aqua's gone. She's already dead, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and do tell him about your silly aunt Aqua, whereupon he nodded with a smirk instead of answering yes, mother.
There you go. That's the next page, 452.
Yeah, so it seems like that's put to bed as a theory. I still don't like the situation of that is weird in the sense of like that would be a pretty big deal. Like if you like gave birth to a kid and then gave it to your sister to raise as her kid, this feels, although I did see yesterday a headline that was like, woman 51 gives birth to grandchild. And I was like, oh boy, this sounds interesting. And it was just like a surrogate situation for her daughter and her daughter's husband. But like a woman did give birth to her own granddaughter.
It wasn't Florida woman.
I wish that would have been more fun. No, this one had all her teeth and everything. Like, looked like it was done in a proper way.
You're only a grandparent at 51. You could be one in your 30s, you know.
You wasted a lot of time.
This is Florida, man. Looking for my shaker of salt.
Oh my God.
All right, so totally off topic, but 473, that top paragraph. Vaughn remembered that Mr. Alexander Skripal, the new president of the United Americas, a plethoric Russian, had flown over to see King Victor, and he correctly concluded that both were now sunk in molitude.
It's perfect.
Molitude, Russia, flying to see Russia, the new president. Like, it's like, oh, wow.
This was the chapter I fell asleep reading, actually.
It happened.
Because I underlined one thing that says, good Gamaliel, not reelected after his 4th term. I was like, oh, that also sounds familiar. You know, given the Trumpian state of things right now, where he's going to have like victory rallies and just won this election by saying he won the election, second term, we are doing legit literary criticism. We just did it. Like nailed Ada. We made this the highest quality research criticism of Nabokov ever. No,
I mean, I'm kind of pissed off because the thing I'm working on right now is a black satire, and there, like we've said this before for years, there's just no room for parody, or I mean, I don't know if satire works anymore, because the whole imagine I'm workshopping a chapter to you, and I tell you, all right, so the president's lawyer, his name is Rudolph, and he's like this horse-faced guy with a big pinky ring, and he's like, hey, we're going to say the election's stolen. We're going to the Four Seasons, but they accidentally do the Four Seasons landscaping. So now he's got to do the press conference in front of a landscaping store that's in between a crematorium and a sex toy shop. And he does it anyways.
Yep.
What do you think? You'd be like, yeah, it's kind of a hat on a hat. I don't know if people would buy that. Right?
Absolutely.
You can't make this up. It doesn't get any better than that.
It really doesn't. And that speech is wonderful, because they're like, well, what do you have to say about every network calling it? Who's called it? Everyone.
Like, you can't.
It's not real.
And so, like, obviously I know Nabokov's having a lot of fun, and I do agree he's looking at these like super elite wealthy family names and just kind of making fun of it. But again, he's having so much fun doing it.
Yeah. This is a fun chapter or fun section because they, at least on 2 occasions, if not more, uses artist as like a verb. Or not as a verb, as an adjective. It's worked in there a few different times. Almost like that one that I just read, The Horror of the Ardor of Artists. Remember that was. The Horror and Ardor of Artists is fun, but like the artist shows up a few times like later on, where it's like kind of a fun, like it's just almost goofy. Yeah, right here, like artistically and artist alecky. I can't say that.
He's getting like into the dad, like really smart dad joke territory, as far as I'm concerned. Like where like the puns, like I get it. Like I think there's like a guy named George that's a waiter, and he's like gorge, like they're getting a lot of food. Like, oh, the pun, I could have done the pun, or what? It's like wanting to be too clever all the time. It's getting a little tiresome, but I mean, it's still fun.
I thought it was like just goofy enough to where it's like these things are crazy, and like now you're just like goofing on things. Like here's a couple more. Like when she falls in the water, tentacling hair. That's a great phrase.
Yeah.
And Dr. Bean was deeply immense in his interesting work as 3 separate words. Interesting work.
It shows up in chapter 2 on page 453 when he meets his old friend and he mispronounces his name, mispronounces his first name, his last name. What are you doing to stay so thin? He's like, oh, I'm on a diet of champagne instead of beer. How's your wife? Like, oh, she had twins. Like, she's portly too. Like, we're both just getting fat, drinking beer. You know?
I love that. I love that.
I feel like there's like this disdain that either this author has, or maybe it's Nabokov that has, for the way he describes art in this. There's like modern art is basically like fecal matter spread across the canvas, like how it, like it's rubbish. Or when you talk about a jazz band, they're all just masturbating on instruments. And it's like that. That's an interesting way of talking about impressionistic art. It's just like fecal smears, right? Or, you know, like that's cool.
I have to go back and read it to make sure I'm not making up this definition. But there was in the book that I'll read, I'll send you part of it too for our scholarship episode, but the book by Asla Nafisi that's about Nabokov, that was like her master's thesis or PhD thesis, doctoral thesis, has a whole bit about his relationship to like kitschy art and plastos, I think is what it's called in there, and that he had a great disdain for people who like collected like that kitschy sort of art of like the acquiring of things, and like where it is either like the goofy like knick-knacky stuff, or like what we were talking about where it's like, oh, well, this painting is really like whatever, I have this painting, that sort of like that relationship to art he sort of like jokes with almost constantly as like that's not really it, guys.
Yeah, no, like I don't know, it like strikes me as the type of person that has season tickets to the symphony and then like scoffs when like a new Stravinsky piece is played or something. Like, ugh, you know. Yeah. I would have rather been bored by Debussy than have to hear this, you know, cacophony of primal urges or blah, you know, like whatever that like thing you say at the martini after party to sound smart. You know what I mean? Like,
I showed you
can't like anything new because it's not seated in this deep history of pomp and circumstance and scholarship and blah blah blah.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of, I have 2 things. So one was and for my class, I always show them book trailers, and I always show them the same book trailers because they're all terrible, but like these ones are specifically terrible in different ways. And one of them is the super sad true love story, Gary Steingart.
Yeah.
Which, have you seen that? Where like the whole gag is just all these people being like, you know, Gary's very accomplished, even though he can't even read. And he's just like dim-witted, like faux Russian, where even like Jeffrey Eugenides is like, yeah, when he was in college, he took some sort of a hallucinogen and like thought that he was like a Russian immigrant and started talking in an accent and pretending all these things. But there's one part where they're asking this girl like what she thinks of him. She's like, well, I really like his class at Columbia, his seminar on how to behave at a Paris Review party. And it has him like with a glass of whiskey in front of his class. He goes, I sure do appreciate the early Ian McEwan over the later Ian McEwan. And everyone has to imitate that. And then he makes fun of the one guy. He's like, James Franco, show him how it's done. And James Franco's there, like scrolling his glass. But that sort of thing, you just reminded me of that, like with your whiskey, with your Manhattan or martini times and Stravinsky. Yeah. The other one that was like a weird reference that I think I caught, and maybe I'm making this up again. People can tell me I'm wrong. I don't care.
Oh, quick aside on that. We used to have this in my MFA. We used to have this one gag running where we each had to take turns where we would draw from a hat, and there was a thing that we had to say in the workshop at some point to see if we could slide it past the professor. And I remember the one that I got for my year of workshop was, I just can't do it with George Saunders. There's so much rising action, or like there's something about I had to, in this really annoying tone, have to talk about so much rising action in George Saunders and liken it to the piece that we were workshopping. So like that same kind of game where you had to have that comment, like whatever.
It's sort of like our old 2-month review bingo, but like
yeah. Yeah,
I did that once with a panel I was on that was going to be really boring. I was like, send me whatever words you think of, text them to me, and I will try and work them in. And I managed to work in all of them. Pirates, Murakami, all sorts of random shit.
Oh, you had the Vladimir Nabokov bingo you sent me, remember?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But totally, everybody completely missed the fact that they didn't do the bingo board correctly because there's not enough squares to spell bingo. Like, I appreciate all the research of these are the tropes and the go-to moves for Vlad. Bingo has 5 letters in it. There are 4 squares across. So Bing, great search engine.
Maybe a bingo board is copyrighted and we just don't know it.
Maybe.
So here's one that I thought. So 490. I thought was very funny and like kind of where this is goofy, but also like what you're saying, like nods towards high art. In a series of 60-year-old, so this is after they're at the movie. He sees Ada on screen.
Oh, that's a whole nother thing we have to unpack at some point.
Okay.
That was such a cool scene. Like,
okay. Let's circle back to that for sure. So this is at the end of that. So he gets up and leaves Lucette and he goes to the bathroom to jack off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in a series of 60-year-old actions, which now I can grind into extinction only by working on a succession of words until the rhythm is right, I, Von, retired to my bathroom, shut the door, blah, 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 blah. Now that retired to is part of this. I'm pretty sure it's retired and not reposed, but there's in Dubliners, there's a character that retires to the outhouse. And there's people that had criticized the critic had been like, this is dumb, like nobody talks that way. He like went to the outhouse, he pooped. He didn't like, retire to the outhouse. And Hugh Kenner has this whole principle about how in indirect writing of that sort, like where you give over the words to the character and that character, Uncle Charles, would retire to the outhouse because he thought of himself in that particular like pompous sort of way. And that gave his character both a motivation, but also like a texture to them. And that specifically using retired here in terms of the bathroom made me think of the Joyce bit. And here it's upended because it's not even like, in that one it's weird because like, yeah, he's just going out to like read a newspaper and like wipe his butt with it. And here it's like Von's going to jacket because Ada's scene was too much for him.
Yeah. And there is this, it's juxtaposed to 60-year-old and extinction.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so retire fits within the idea of kind of aged, waning, whatever. Yeah. Retired to my bathroom. I used to work at a hotel, and it was it was a real high-end hotel near Stanford University. And so we get all like the bigwigs that come in to do talks and tech talks at Stanford and this terrible thing called the Hoover Institute, which is a Republican think tank. So we get lots of high. And I used to always say, "May I install your luggage for you?" Like that was the terminology I liked. What's that as a joke? It's for fun. May I install your luggage? And they kind of look at me like, "Yes, that'd be great." But it's kind of like retire. Yeah, retire to the bathroom. May I install your luggage for you? Like, can I take your shit up to the room?
Yeah, I'm just gonna carry these bags.
It's not what you say; it's how you say it.
Number one. Absolutely. So
you can next time you can say, "I need to install my poop into the porcelain. I shall retire."
And install. Oh my God.
You better be two drinks deep, 3 drinks deep before you say something like that, though.
Very, very good point. Very good point. I might lead with that next time I get to go to a party.
Next time I get. Oh, parties. Remember those?
Remember? Yeah. By the time I get to go to a party again, every single dumb joke bit that I've gathered up will just be like I'll be like a Tommy gun of terrible jokes. It's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna have no friends. I'm gonna never be invited back to a party. Where should we go from here? So let's talk about that scene then. Why don't you start?
Well, before that, he has a little tryst with what's her name? Like she shows up and is like
Cordula.
Yeah. So we get like the Cordula, a little fling with her, and then the whole like whores across America or the world or whatever aspect of it. But then Lucette shows up like begging for him to sleep with her, and he doesn't, and he won't.
Yeah.
What do you think is his rationale or reason for not sleeping with Lucette? Because he obviously has no qualms or moral standards as far as his sexuality is concerned.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. Related to that. So the Cordula line is great. Is one of my favorites. Will you cooperate with me in cornutting your husband? Cornutting.
May I install your luggage?
Yeah, I'm gonna cornut your husband. Let's get this. Let's go. I always thought it was that Lucette is not Ada. Simply that she's not, that Ada is his real love, and like Lucette would complicate that. Like he'll fuck anyone else and like does all that, but like Lucette would be then almost a betrayal and like a pale copy.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's the way I took it as well. Like it somehow, everything else is okay, but that is too close to Ada, and it would be like, it would taint that pure love that he has for her.
Yeah, and she even references one of the fun parts at the end when the letters is like, this all sucks when Lucette's dead and kills herself because we didn't know these sort of unpleasantnesses in our artist times. And there is something about that protecting that a little bit, because the other option would be that Lucette's like that he's protective of her, but I don't think that he is. Like he just leaves her at various points in time and is like,
no, he's terrible to her.
Yeah, he's not.
And she knows it too at this point. She's grown up enough where she's saying like, you've toyed with me, don't toy with me now. Like I know what you did in the past, don't do that to me now.
And I like how she's like, if we don't fuck tonight, we're never going to do it.
And she even kind of sets up like she's very keen in how to try to manipulate him, because she sets up the whole thing with like, you want artists? I have it and I can give it to you.
Yeah.
Use it, and I'll leave when you want me to. Like it's just kind of like this sad bargain she's trying to set up to be with him, and he doesn't take it.
Yeah.
And to me, which makes her eventual suicide just that much more sad, that she had been that manipulated and toyed with as a kid, that she grows up like thinking like that and behaving like that and being so final when she realizes Ada is it for him and there's nothing else, and she has no place in that love affair.
Yeah. Except with Ada,
yeah.
So interesting. Ada is like the peak. The other two are aspiring towards.
I'm sure there's an essay about it. Maybe we'll find one, but there's another reference here to that. We've been seeing that yellow and black butterfly, and the whole with the pillows are yellow and black again. So I'm curious. There's that kind of echo throughout the work. So I'm kind of curious what that means or represents, or that'd be a fun thing to unpack. So hopefully that's something we can do in the scholarship episode.
I'll do a deep dive into the scholarship thing this week, so we can get it all lined up and see if anyone has any recommendations. Please slide those along too, or send them.
Because I think the Hamlet stuff and the Garden of Eden stuff is pretty apparent. For me, the yellow and black is a little bit weird, and then the whole water. There's the water element that's going throughout. The demon, like it almost feels like where they're at is purgatory or hell in some way, right? And so there's the whole heaven and hell thing that's going on as well, which would be fun to kind of discuss once we've finished everything.
Yeah, which is funny. One of the reference, the title of this episode is "Pale Fire" with Tom Cox Up. Which is a reference to the painting in which Pale Fire on Anti-Terra is a horse running a race.
Okay.
Painting, but I saw that right away and was like, oh, this is fun, like a Pale Fire reference, but like totally not.
And there was a slight, almost reference to Speak Memory.
Oh, there's a reference. I thought all the Dolores stuff always makes me think that those are Lolita. Like there's so many Lolita ones, but all of the Dolores ones are like.
Yeah, when they talk about Dolly, it's like, oh, is this a? Yeah.
Haze. Yeah.
A dancing girl lifted from Osberg's novella, as was to be proved in an ensuing lawsuit.
Yeah. It's a line I was looking at. So what about this, like unpacking the movie?
I thought it was really interesting because the episode before you were talking about the viewer and the way those letters, or no, the pictures.
Yeah.
And the difference in memory of this is how I remember this situation. And then here's this person who took a picture of it and now trying to figure out, is that how it really happened or not? And then I love that we get to see the two people that are closest to Ada in her life. Well, I assume the younger sister and Vaughn are both watching the same picture and having completely different reactions to the same just kind of blank subject, right? Yeah. It's just a subject on the screen, but the two are having completely different reactions to it. And I thought that was so fascinating, the way he set up that triangle and that view, and with two being voyeurs of the subject. So really interesting, really cool.
Is all of this book set up as triangles? Is triangle like the main motif of this whole book in the end?
Well, I don't know.
There's all these shapes that show up like that over and over again, either like in pairings with the people, the names of people.
The V versus an A.
Versus the A. Yeah. The VV for the author as the Vladimir Nabokov sort of stand in at times.
Yeah. Like
there's a lot of it that like makes me think that there's, I don't know. I like patterns of shit like that though.
And then it's almost like he doubles down on that when in the letter at the very end, Demon talks about how Howard Hooks, or whatever the guy's actor's name is, talks about how all of this needs to be burned because this wasn't like the actual, like, it was somebody's interpretation of Cervantes, but it was Don Juan, like, what? Holy, like,
but that's kind of the same thing, that there's like a two that become into one. Yeah. Becoming into one is like elements of both being kind of crushed together. It's kind of like the other V that I was thinking of is Terra and Anti-Terra, and like what's in between that, or like what's the focal point for that relationship. Like there's a I don't know. Maybe I'm completely crazy, but Vinelander is the name of her husband.
Yeah.
There's so many V's. It's not common.
In an odd kind of way, like would you consider this like Nabokov's postmodern novel? I don't know what that I have like lots of issues with terms of postmodernism in a way, because I think people use it nowadays to be like to castigate works, and he uses like, oh, it's postmodern nonsense. But I don't think that postmodernism is static, and I don't think that it is like a thing that is only represented by a certain deal. Like I think that this is the most aware. Like Lolita and Pale Fire are working on their own terms and they're very postmodern in so many sensibilities in so many ways, and are like advances of like the art of writing and structure. And yet this is the first book of his written after that in which it's aware of all of that.
Like all the stuff in the Lolita and that it's there, but it doesn't like, I don't feel like he brings the attention to it in the same way. Like all the little games, all the little sneaky jokes and stuff are sneakily in there, but they're only kind of within this like solipsistic realm. And this is the first time it feels less solipsistic and a little bit more like, oh, I'm making this for you and for all of you. And you can see like all the inner working jokes, but you will never understand the magic trick.
Yeah, I just meant that it starts feeling very fractured. Like it just starts like cracking and cracking and cracking and cracking, which gives that kind of weird, to me, like that 60s postmodern feel where it's like, what it sounds weird. Once we go off the gold standard and there's the federalist, like what is money anymore? And it just starts shattering and it becomes completely weird and meaningless and hard to figure out. And that this part here where I felt like I was like in this Hall of Mirrors funhouse made me feel very postmodern. Like it felt very postmodern in that section of like, oh my God, what is he doing right here? This is incredible.
Yeah.
And again, postmodernism, I know it's one of those weird, broad brushstrokes, but I mean it more in the sense of like abutted next to modernism, right?
Less like finding a coherence through things and more of exploring the fragmentation of things.
Correct. It's more about fragmentation and meaning and almost a loss of meaning as you start deconstructing stuff.
I mean, it really does too, because in a sense, like this book has always been asking us to upend our morality. And it's begging you to like say like, it's okay for him to fuck his sister.
Well, like just think about that key scene where Demon is confronting Vaughn and is like, oh, it's worse than you think, actually. There's this, and this. like you're only scratching the surface of the depravity of the situation.
Yeah.
And he's like gently rubbing the edge of the desk. Like, yes, like he's asking to just normalize and actually kind of praising and exalting this insane aberrant behavior.
I mean, yeah, this is one of those sections too, where like about Lucette in particular, where it's like, this is kind of hot. Like his descriptions can be very sensual.
I think he loves doing that. Like the bathing suit scenes and the way he depicts sweats or people's hair. He chooses really interesting like parts of sensuality. He doesn't go for the cliche aspects of it, for sure.
Although he does at one weird point in here when that woman walks by with the big ass.
Sure.
And she's like, and Lucette's like, oh, it's for you, blah, blah, blah. Those gluteal lobes and folds is the phrase.
Gluteal lobes.
Yeah. And I don't know that. She's a stranger, blah, blah, blah. It's like the one. What's that?
It's like you're describing an insect or something, not a person.
But where was like he calls something like the bikini tops like the breast
bikini.
It's something like breast cups or bra cups or something, and it's like that's a really funny way to put it. This is one that's like real dirty. Passing his hand over her sun hot back and rubbing her coccyx to make her pussy purr. Like, well, okay.
Yeah, but that was a lot more. That didn't mean what it means now in the 60s, right?
Yeah, fair. It's just one that jumps out.
I don't know.
I'm gonna find what I was looking for, but I can't find it. There is one.
Jimmy Stewart read this. Would that be? That wouldn't be. Imagine Jimmy's. Oh God, God, God! The way they talked back then in those movies, right?
Like Newsies.
Yeah.
The other one, and this is. I was gonna make this my my phrase of the week, but I'm not going to, because I want to talk about it here. But sort of related to that is that I have it is well documented that I hate the word gaze.
Yeah.
I think gaze is super overused and incorrectly used most of the time in translations in particular, especially from the French. And it's frustrating to me. And then right here on page 486, I'm like, this is how it's used correctly. This is right. So Lucette's walking away from him. He's behind her. Then she walked before him as conscious of his gaze as if she were winning a prize for poise. And I'm like, yes, that's gaze. That's when you use gaze correctly.
Oh, good God. I remember I was working on a story and I sent it to you to get some thoughts on it, and it had gays in it like 4 times. I'm like, what the fuck is all this? It's like, oh geez, okay, sorry. Didn't mean to trigger you with somebody's male gaze on something. Yeah. I was trying to play with the idea of the male gaze, but okay, sorry.
Stop triggering me. There's a gaze trigger warning to all of these books. Oh man! So Lucetta's death. One of the people watching has commented about how it was super cinematic, almost like watching a movie for her passing, which is true, and it does take on like a frenetic pace there in a way that like the book is so languorous in so many ways. Like events that are happen in slow. Like time is fucked with on like an action level here.
Well, yeah, because I mean, like there's that whole brief montage where like he's Dr. Veen now, and he's at 31. Has 400 level of psychology where most people are in their 50s, blah, blah, blah. And now they're on a cruise ship or something, whatever. Like, yeah, it kind of rushes, ebbs and flows and rushes with that. But yeah, there was the setup of the pills. Mm-hmm. And then she says there's a mention of time with the number of pills that she has left.
Yep.
Almost as if she had already set like, I was like, oh, she's killing herself. Okay, got it.
Yeah. Like I thought it was that she was like, yeah, that there was 2 choices. She wouldn't need the pills because she wouldn't need to sleep because they'd be up having sex all night, or she'll use all the pills at once.
Yeah, see, I knew it. I took it as all at once because she already knew from the previous, when she gave him the estate and he rejected it, she knew it's over. And so when she has the pills, she says, I don't need all of these. Oh, she's going to swallow them all.
I had a thought that I forgot about, but the Robinsons that are hanging out with her on the boat are like, they reminded me of the mantras from Rodrigo's books. They're just like these like insipid like people that just pop up everywhere and like, hey, you're over here, let's go watch this movie. This is great. Let's watch this movie together. And she's like, oh, fuck. No more Mr. and Mrs. Robinson.
Yeah, their letter. Oh, golly, we feel terrible. How do we know those pills we gave her? How do we know those pills? But yeah, she takes all the pills. She takes all the booze. She's throwing up pink foam or whatever. Like,
and she dives. She dives.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't jump. She dives. I didn't get this, but you probably will, and you'll set me straight right away. Although Lucette had never dived before. No, dived before Violet from such a height. What is the Violet reference there?
All right, 1 second, hold on. Yeah, we're still recording. I'll let you know when you can. Sorry. Violet, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't know what that was, but someone probably does. It's probably somewhere in the annotations that you can find online, but I did not look that one up. I was curious if that was like an obvious joke that is just missing.
Yeah, no, definitely a cinematic death, especially with like there's a helicopter involved. There's a boat circling the.
Again, okay, when were helicopters invented?
I don't know.
Not 1901.
No, but we've already established that this was like a 50-year. There's like a 50-year gap between. Is it 50, 30 or 50 years?
Well, they say like on Terra
and Anti-Terra.
Terra's technology from 50 years in the future is their technology now.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. So like the helicopter being on there is like makes sense within the context of this, but it's another one of those like, yeah, we're reinforcing time is not the same.
Yeah.
Time is definitely broken. The thing, going back to that for a second, one of the other things when you're talking about how it's weird and wonky is that some of the bigger events either happen off screen or in like no time is spent on them. Like Ada getting married is literally off page.
Yeah.
But then you'll spend like epic amounts of time on like the photographs of them being at artists, which we've already seen in other ways. Like it's weird. The pace and flow of it is very specific. Like it gets like elongated at moments in time where it's like blissful, maybe. I don't know if this tracks, but it feels like it gets elongated at points in times when there's like blissful moments or like moments that they remain in. And then the action is like quick as shit when it's like just stuff that needs to get off the board.
Yeah.
Like that she gets married, that she moves, that she does that. She's in the films. Like the fact that she's in these films is not told in this book. Like it's like a paragraph.
Yeah.
weird. The time of it is very weird to me. And I think that could be, I hope that there's an essay on like time in this book.
Yeah, weird. Yeah, and helicopters, I just Googled real fast, it said 1939, late 1939 was like the first one. So probably in the 40s when it's actually being.
Yeah, I track everything by like world wars. And I was like, World War I didn't have helicopters.
Or did World War II really?
No.
Vietnam, though. That's all those great helicopter, the Huey. Yeah. You can't have platoon without a helicopter.
Helicopters were like stumping for Vietnam after manufacturers.
You know, it's a weird thing like to think about time. Slightly off topic, but these two movies existed in the exact same year, Top Gun and Platoon.
Wow.
So like you could look at the military and war or whatever in two like really different avenues of the Reagan administration between Top Gun and Platoon.
Oh my God.
Isn't that weird?
That's very weird. It's always surprising to find like pick a year and like see what art came out in that year. It's always so wild. I hear it with movies a lot too because of How Did This Get Made, where they'll be at the end of each episode, they'll be like, this came out in this year, it ranked here, here's the other movies that were on that came out that year that we did on our podcast. And you're like, God, that's a crazy assortment of things that happened. Like the top movies, it'll also say the top movies, but it is always so weird.
Can you imagine though, take the movie Platoon, Oliver Stone Platoon, and somewhere in that movie, put a beach volleyball scene with Kenny Loggins playing some music and just the shirtless guys in Platoon playing with the boys out there chasing rainbows. Boom! Like, yeah, they're putting that in that movie. And then they all go die. They all get shot in the jungle.
Oh my God.
As they're killing little kids and women and children in the jungle. Oh, Platoon.
Uplifting.
Happy Veterans Day, everyone.
Oh my God, you're right. Holy shit. Way to tie that in.
Yeah.
Nice job. I don't know if there's anything else. The movie thing is interesting too because of one reason. Oh, I have two things I want to say. One about time and one about the movie. The movie where Demon's like, you know, the actor or the director is like, nope, this is gone. I'm going to delete it. I'm going to destroy it all. And Bond's last letter that's like he buries and isn't really a letter and is destroyed and the ending isn't there is a story of him trying to find this movie again and trying to see it over and over again. And like the ways, because it's not purchasable, it's not accessible. It's a form of art that is ephemeral due to that restriction. Like it can only be seen in movie theaters and not very many of them. And so he chases it down. And I think there's something really interesting to me about that, about like his pursuit of this image of Ada as an actress within this crazy movie that he doesn't even know the name of.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's almost as if like, if that's he masturbated to it, right? And so it became this kind of marker for him of this is the last piece of Ada I can have. And then if it's taken away, there's this insatiable urge to recover it in some kind of way, right?
Yeah. Here's specifically what you were talking about, the two different things. So Ada appears and Lucette says, oh, how awful. It was bound to happen. That's she. Let's go, please, let's go. You must not see her debasing herself. She's terribly made up. Every gesture is childish and wrong. And Bond thinks, terrible? Wrong? She was absolutely perfect and strange and poignantly familiar. By some stroke of art, by some enchantment of chance, the few brief scenes she was given formed a perfect compendium of her 1884 and 1888 and 1892 looks.
So time again, right?
Yeah. Which ties into the last thing I was going to say is that somewhere when he's so she's talking about the Robinsons, Lucetta is, and how they're going to turn up and like they're old and blah 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 blah. And he says it's very clever, except that time itself is motionless and changeless, which is like almost the Slaughterhouse-Five version of time, of it being like one unchanging thing. You were just at a different point along the spectrum, So I'm still super curious about that aspect of it. This book is crazy. That we're on page 502 and it's still like, I feel like all these hints have been set forth and we're just not getting like the payoff for them.
Yeah.
Or they're not clues.
Yeah. And again, this is like a section where a lot happened, but what is actually resolved? Yeah.
Nothing. Like he doesn't have sex with Lucette. She is dead.
Love it.
Love it too. So
she's dead, but I mean, I love that it completely subverts your expectations as to what's going to happen. Absolutely.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite line from this or any last things that you want to bring up?
No, I just thought that triangle of them, of Lucette and him observing her on celluloid and the two different reactions was just such a brilliant scene. Loved it. Was so in awe of that. Just I guess to kind of right before that thing that you said about how awful or how great, page 488 at the bottom. In the magic rays of the camera and the controlled delirium of ballerina Grace, 10 years of her life had glanced off, and she was, again, that slip of a girl, as she had jested once to annoy her governess by a fictitious Frenchman's mistranslation, a remembered triviality that intruded upon the chill of his present emotion with the jarring stupidity of an innocent stranger asking an absorbed voyeur for directions in a labyrinth of mean lanes. It's
interesting. The one that I was going to read is right before that is 487. Relates to the time thing again. More, in fact, but no matter. Our measurements of time are meaningless. The most accurate clock is a joke. You'll read all about it someday. You just wait.
And again, that goes back to you were talking about the book. The only thing he does, the only thing he writes that's going to matter is going to be on time.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be part 4.
Yeah. I can't wait to find out how wrong we all are.
Yep, same thing. But next week we'll be going over chapters 7 through, I believe it's 11. It's the end of part 3, or maybe it's not even that many. 7 through something, but it's up to page 532, and it is the end of part 3, and then we'll have part 4 and 5 the week after that, followed by the scholarship one. But we're very close to the end of this. And within this week, we'll announce like the schedule for everything for JR. So again, if anyone wants to get out on that, please email us. You can always email me at chad.post@rochester.edu. It's easy to find on Twitter at chadwpost or Instagram or wherever. Brian, you want to plug anything or tell people where they can find you?
I want to plug the French composer Claude Debussy. It's a wonderful thing to read or to listen to while you're reading this book. I put it on. It's perfect for the feel. It's kind of dreamy, but a little bit seductive at the same time. Perfect for this. If you like short stories, pick up my book. If not, don't worry about it. Get JR, and we'll have some fun.
Absolutely. I have to. This is random, but I'm going to say it here anyways. Have you ever listened to the Dandy Warhols?
Yes.
Okay. Did you know that they came out with a new album this week?
No, I haven't been following new albums.
No. Okay. So their album is a 3-hour and 43-minute long set of songs that are all instrumental, like trance. What do you call that? That's the word I'm looking for. But like drone music.
Oh, cool.
Isn't that the most bizarre?
Yeah. All right.
Check it out. It's very weird. I'll use it as the intro music for this, like a bit of it, because it's bizarre to me that someone is just like, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do an album in 2020, fucking 4 hours long.
Everybody's got time on their hands.
Time on their hands.